Socialism is a range of economic and social systems characterized by social ownership and democratic control of the means of production, as well as the political ideologies, theories, and movements that aim at their establishment. Social ownership may refer to forms of public, collective, or cooperative ownership, to citizen ownership of equity, or to any combination of these. Although there are many varieties of socialism and there is no single definition encapsulating all of them, social ownership is the common element shared by its various forms. Socialist economic systems can be divided into both non-market and market forms. Non-market socialism involves the substitution of factor markets and money with engineering and technical criteria based on calculation performed in kind, thereby producing an economic mechanism that functions according to different economic laws from those of capitalism. Non-market socialism aims to circumvent the inefficiencies and crises traditionally associated with capital accumulation and the profit system. By contrast, market socialism retains the use of monetary prices, factor markets, and, in some cases, the profit motive with respect to the operation of socially owned enterprises and the allocation of capital goods between them. Profits generated by these firms would be controlled directly by the workforce of each firm or accrue to society at large in the form of a social dividend. The feasibility and exact methods of resource allocation and calculation for a socialist system are the subjects of the socialist calculation debate. The socialist political movement includes a diverse array of political philosophies that originated amid the revolutionary movements of the mid to late 1700s under a general concern for the social problems that were associated with capitalism. In addition to the debate over markets and planning, the varieties of socialism differ in the form of social ownership, how management is to be organized within productive institutions, and the role of the state in constructing socialism. Core dichotomies associated with these concerns include reformism versus revolutionary socialism, and state socialism versus libertarian socialism. Socialist politics has been both centralist and decentralized, internationalist and nationalist in orientation, organized through political parties, and opposed to party politics, at times overlapping with trade unions and at other times independent of, and critical of, unions, and present in both industrialized and developing countries. While all tendencies of socialism consider themselves democratic, the term democratic socialism is often used to highlight its advocates' high value for democratic processes in the economy and democratic political systems, usually to draw contrast to tendencies they may perceive to be undemocratic in their approach. The term is frequently used to draw contrast to the political system of the Soviet Union, which some have argued operated in an authoritarian fashion. By the late 19th century, and after further articulation and advancement by Karl Marx and his collaborator Friedrich Engels as the culmination of technological development, outstripping the economic dynamics of capitalism, socialism had come to signify opposition to capitalism and advocacy for a post-capitalist system based on some form of social ownership of the means of production. By the 1920s, social democracy and communism became the two dominant political tendencies within the international socialist movement. Socialism proceeded to emerge as the most influential secular political economic worldview of the 20th century, and while the emergence of the Soviet Union as the world's first nominally socialist state led to socialism's widespread association with the Soviet economic model, many economists and intellectuals have argued that in practice the model functioned as a form of state capitalism, or a non-planned administrative or command economy. Socialist parties and ideas remain a political force with varying degrees of power and influence in all continents, heading national governments in many countries around the world. Today, some socialists have also adopted the causes of other social movements, such as environmentalism, feminism and liberalism. Etymology. The origin of the term socialism may be traced back and attributed to a number of originators. In addition to significant historical shifts in the usage and scope of the word. For Andrew Vincent, the word socialism finds its root in the Latin sociare, which means to combine or to share. The related, more technical term in Roman and then medieval law was societas. This latter word could mean companionship and fellowship, as well as the more legalistic idea of a consensual contract between freemen. The term socialism was created by Henry de Saint-Simon, one of the founders of what would later be labeled utopian socialism. Simon coined socialism as a contrast to the liberal doctrine of individualism, which stressed that people should act as if they are in isolation from one another. The original utopian socialists condemned liberal individualism for failing to address social concerns during the Industrial Revolution, including poverty, social oppression, and gross inequalities in wealth, viewing liberal individualism as degenerating society and to supporting selfish egoism that harmed community life. Through promoting a society based on competition, they presented socialism as an alternative to liberal individualism based on the shared ownership of resources. Although the proposals for socialism differed significantly, Saint-Simon proposed economic planning, scientific administration, and the application of modern scientific advancements to the organization of society. By contrast, Robert Owen proposed the organization of production and ownership in cooperatives. The term socialism is attributed to Pierre Leroux and to Marie Roch-Louis-Raybaud in France, and in Britain to Robert Owen in 1827, father of the cooperative movement. The modern definition and usage of socialism settled by the 1860s, becoming the predominant term among the group of words cooperative, mutualist, and associationist, which had previously been used as synonyms. The term communism also fell out of use during this period, despite earlier distinctions between socialism and communism from the 1840s. An early distinction between socialism and communism was that the former aimed to only socialize production while the latter aimed to socialize both production and consumption. However, by 1888 Marxists employed the term socialism in place of communism, which had come to be considered an old-fashioned synonym for socialism. It wasn't until 1917, after the Bolshevik Revolution, that socialism came to refer to a distinct stage between capitalism and communism, introduced by Vladimir Lenin as a means to defend the Bolshevik seizure of power against traditional Marxist criticisms that Russia's productive forces were not sufficiently developed for socialist revolution. A distinction between communist and socialist as descriptors of political ideologies arose in 1918 after the Russian Social Democratic Labour Party renamed itself to the All-Russian Communist Party, where communist came to specifically mean socialists who supported the politics and theories of Leninism, Bolshevism and later Marxism-Leninism, although communist parties continued to describe themselves as socialists dedicated to socialism. Linguistically, the contemporary connotation of the words socialism and communism accorded with the adherents' and opponents' cultural attitude towards religion. In Christian Europe, of the two, communism was believed the atheist way of life. In Protestant England, the word communism was too culturally and orally close to the Roman Catholic communion rite. Hence, English atheists denoted themselves socialists. Friedrich Engels argued that in 1848, at the time when the Communist Manifesto was published, socialism was respectable on the continent, while communism was not. The Owenites in England and the Fourierists in France were considered respectable Socialists, while working-class movements that proclaimed the necessity of total social change denoted themselves communists. This latter branch of socialism produced the communist work of Etienne Cabet in France and Wilhelm Weitling in Germany. The British moral philosopher John Stuart Mill also came to advocate a form of economic socialism within a liberal context. In later editions of his Principles of Political Economy, Mill would argue that, as far as economic theory was concerned, there is nothing in principle in economic theory that precludes an economic order based on socialist policies. While Democrats looked to the revolutions of 1848 as a democratic revolution, which in the long run ensured liberty, equality, and fraternity, Marxists denounced 1848 as a betrayal of working-class ideals by a bourgeoisie indifferent to the legitimate demands of the proletariat.